Hello. Welcome to the Daily Awesome. This is Jen Hart, empowering you to get unstuck and live your best life. Today's topic is about changing your state to induce emotional healing and change your life. The reason why I'm so into this stuff is because this is how I healed a lot of childhood trauma. And it's the oxymoron and sort of like an explanation on there are 1,001 tools. If you desire to change your life, if you desire to be happier and more fulfilled, and no matter what your desire is, you can fulfill it. And there's the catch-22. Sorry, that was my car. The catch-22 of a lot of this stuff is that you have to embody or have to have a thing or a feeling or an experience internally in order to see it externally. So for people who, like me, grew up with some childhood neglect and not all of their needs were met physically as well as emotionally, I had to somehow survive that. And, well, surviving, I'm like, obviously I'm alive. But beyond that, to thrive and to become a person that feels love, can express love as well as receive love. For a long time, and I can say this empirically, I did a lot of things that didn't work, or I didn't know really what to do. So I wouldn't say magically, but somewhat, I could say spiritually. I know in the manifesting law of assumption community, there are certain people that don't like to talk about a higher intelligence of some sort. I, for personally, needed that in order to heal. I don't think it's required, like, at all, like, that you believe in, I don't know, the word God or anything like that, to change your life. Not at all. But for me personally, I needed something that was bigger than myself, that I felt loved by, that wasn't because my mom couldn't do it to the extent that I could see or feel. So, not to be wah-wah, this is a pathway. It's not the only pathway. It is a pathway in order to start healing and shifting your life. So for me, a lot of my core stuff was about, I didn't feel worthy to exist. I didn't feel worthy of being, and I didn't feel loved, which is weird because I did have external people that cared about me to the degree, but I couldn't receive it. That's why they always say you have to love yourself before someone else loves you. And that's a tricky one because we're all programmed usually by our people that raised us, whether it's your parents or a grandparent, or if you're in the foster care system, you're programmed by the people that are around you on what love or what that feeling of attachment feels like. So I got my needs met in a certain way with my mom. She was my primary and only caregiver, so that's how I received it. And then, and I got what I could because we are amazing beings. We do what we have to in order to survive mentally and spiritually and physically. So, and it's like not the worst child case in the world by any stretch. And even this is why I look outwardly towards other people. Dave, I think his name is Dave Metzler. I have his book. It was like the worst childhood abuse case in California history. And I also looked to J.C. Duggard. Not Duggard. The name escapes me, but her story doesn't. Like her story, she was 11, she was kidnapped, and she was found 18 years later in California. California, man. No blame to California, but it's just an interesting synchronicity there. So I always look to people that have had struggle in order to figure out and reverse engineer how the hell did they become out of it better people and more still, like, with their emotions and their empathy intact. And it didn't mean that it didn't take a while to get there. Like, even for myself, I had empathy and I've had emotions, and it's gone to the point where I would over empathize with people. And that left me in a very compromising position in safety wise, but also not knowing what boundaries were and stuff like that. So those are the things that I had to learn in a practical sense. Now, in the manifesting, like changing your state aspect, it's like I didn't know how to wrap my mind or feelings around what love felt like. And that's was one of my main issues of why I was a people pleaser, why I did a lot of things, why I wasn't taking care of myself, is because I didn't love myself, like point blank. And I didn't feel loved by either God or the people around me. And then that manifested into me getting into, and it literally, when I tell you, it manifested me into not having like family support, not having a lot of things. It really debilitated. I tried to control it, but it was not working. And my anxiety was through the roof. My depression was, it was not pleasant times to be in the body of said me. So I'm not trying to tell you about my sob story by any stretch, because I'm happy now. And I'm like, life is always getting better. The moments are getting better. It's not perfect because life is fun, life, but it's perfect. I mean, to a degree. What am I getting at? Changing your state. So when I was going through my healing process of being, I'm not doing this anymore to myself. I have to figure out a way to love myself so I feel the love of other people, like legitimately, so I can attract more of it. Because I understood the law of attraction, and I understood how my thoughts created reality, because I woke up to the fact that, oh, I've done this to myself. I've actually make myself withhold from people. I made myself be scared of the world. I mean, because there were times when I wasn't, so I could see the difference. So this is where going backwards to bring self-awareness is super important, because you can see when maybe a behavior or an action, and that repeated over quite a length of time, would produce a result like where I was at that point. So this is why I love psychology, I love metaphysics, I love quantum physics, I love NLP, I love anything that shows you, and then mindfulness and whatnot. It shows you, okay, this is the pattern, and this is lack of judgment on like where you were. This is no self-hate at all, because was huge. Self-criticism, like I'm not perfect, I can never do anything right, like a really horrible thoughts. Like I couldn't imagine thinking those thoughts now to myself, but I could go back in time and see that mindset, because I was there for a very long time. So the point I'm getting at is that when we are growing up, we are patterned by our parents and conditioned. Our mind is conditioned in a certain way. So you talk like this to these people. You receive love to this people. You don't understand emotions because maybe your parents were not emotional. Or like my mom, because she had cried so much growing up, because she was really horribly abused, and I'm lucky in the fact that she was able to share that with me when I was a kid. Now, I have a different perspective now, because I know that's unhealthy to parentize your child. Because, hello, I was a parent as a kid. But it helped me wrap around my head why she was the way she was. So it gave me more compassion for her. It gave me more knowing that, okay, she can't teach what she didn't learn. Like, my grandfather was a complete narcissist and alcoholic who abused his family. And she was amazing. Like, I can't imagine living the life that she lived, and how strong she was, and how she was not a perfect person or parent, because nobody is, but like, you would think that what I grew up with, like, oh, I should be a drug addict or anything like that. I'm not. I mean, I had a long time where I wasn't taking care of myself, and I wasn't always good to people, to my guilt about that. I wasn't always good to people, and I wasn't good to myself. So that took a while to heal. And how I healed it was reminding me that there were times and states where I felt loved. And this is using the 3D a little bit. It's also building the case mentally. And I'm not, the hard part about the psychology pieces is going backwards and talking to your child self, or or say a parent. And they don't acknowledge that they have done something wrong. And it really does, it's disheartening when your reality was so true. Like you didn't feel loved and they're denying it. And that sucks. Because in their mind and their position is that they did all they knew. So they don't really have a frame of reference because they received love in a maladaptive or dysfunctional way. So when they're giving you that love, and you just don't know any different. It's not that you're not a bad person because you didn't know. You just didn't know. If you want to become more conscious and want to have a better life, changing your state about the past. It's not excusing the past. It's not saying that it was good to happen, like all the crazy things, but it's becoming, I think this is a different topic than I was talking about, but it's making meaning around what I gained from my childhood, what I gained from my mom. Like I've gained incredible strength and the amount of things that she had to go through to live and survive in her own mind, let alone the world. I'm like, she imparted that in me too. Like she may have not been able to validate my feelings as a kid and like not pay attention to me. And I was very lonely and didn't feel like to exist up until 2013. Like seriously, like I had moments but I really felt that way. So how do I get beyond that was I did shift my state into saying, okay, well, what would somebody who feels loved look like? What does it feel like? Because I can't imagine, well, before 2013, I didn't have like a real wraparound of how to do this. And with therapy, they work on your thought processes. And that's super important, a part of this healing, changing states, manifesting the reality you want. You do have to change your thoughts because they change the emotions that are in your body, but not in a way where you feel like you're invalidating yourself. And this is the tricky part because a lot of affirmations feel initially as if you're lying to yourself because they're hard to believe. And you don't have to believe your affirmations, which is even more interesting because it shows that we are programmed. It shows that you can change your reality based and your thought processes and how it comes out externally if you repeat a pattern long enough. And as children, you're literally sponges at least till the age of 7. So you're literally taking in the world as that's the facts. And it's just one area of truth. It's not the whole picture. It's just how you're programmed. And you can change your programming, which is wonderful because if you've had any duress in any circumstance, whether it's trauma, whether it's if you lived in a religious organization that was like a cult or a regular like situation, like a family dynamic that's like any type of dysfunction, if you're not happy, you probably want to change that programming. If you just don't feel good for whatever reason, your brain is a wonderful machine and it tends to repeat patterns because it's easier. It uses less glucose and less energy to create a result. And majority of our brain we use a very small percentage. I think I've talked about this before. We use a very small percentage of our brain power, and the most of it we're run by our unconscious thoughts. So if we're unconscious most of the time, it's amazing we can even get out the door, let alone love and have a fruitful, abundant life. Like, it's amazing. But it's very doable because as a conscious person, and you become a conscious creator, and the more conscious and aware of your thoughts you become, you can change your state. Now, from a physical perspective, changing your state you can do, and there are tons of videos on YouTube, as well as how your body, biology, the behavior. So if you smile for a certain amount of minutes or seconds, you produce chemicals that produce the feeling of happiness. The same, I think her name is Amy Cuddy. I might be getting that wrong, but she did a TED Talk based on body positions, which would give you more confidence. So if you stand in a Superman position, that will change your mental chemicals. And if you do it long enough, it changes your feeling. So if you would compare your state to slumped over, not very energetic, and then you go into a Superman pose for like 5 minutes or so, I don't remember the amount of time, but it literally changes your inner patterns, which is fascinating. So I used that because I had to get some science behind a lot of how I could wrap my brain around things, because I'm fairly logical. So I needed something concrete to be like, okay, well, if that changes thought patterns and changes a behavior and a feeling. So if I produce a new thought pattern, such as I'm loved and cared for, and at first it feels very, like, at least back then, it didn't feel true. So I would repeat it. And I would also repeat, I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It's like, I'm valuable, worthy, and deserving. And then I also added, like, to put my good girl panties on and to, like, do the work of that and do the work of taking care of myself and do the work of becoming a grown-up again. And I was a grown-up, but I also was immature in so many aspects. So, because I couldn't, like, I didn't see a lot, because you don't know until you know. So this talk is about changing your state. If you want to feel better, you don't have to have a childhood like mine in order to change your state. Your inner state comes from within. And we are programmed by our families to believe that if our parents don't love us in the way we're feeling love, initially from the first 7 years, then we don't feel that. So it's hard to reproduce as we get older. And we can piecemeal it from people, like, externally. Like, without my best friend, I know I almost unequivocally can say that I wouldn't be here. And she didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know that, like she really didn't know until much later how severe my depression was. And that's why I believe in grace and an higher intelligence. And I don't call it God, because that's loaded with a lot of man-made conditioned patterns that are also not healthy as well, because they don't allow you to be yourself, typically. And then they try to get people to be under control of a thought process, which I think we're all supposed to be individuals here and supposed to be as happy as possible and as healthy as possible. And yeah, that's another topic. But I do believe in intelligent force, because I'm not the prime mover of the universe. I might be an operant power of my own reality by the thoughts and feelings I create. And even then, there are certain things, like what color eyes I was born with. I do have a spiritual philosophy around, like, being able to choose, like, certain lessons in your life and who your parents were. So that's why I was able to, like, forgive and accept my childhood, is because I can see where I could have made that choice. And then I also have intuition that I can't explain having without having an intelligent factor in the mix. So whatever that intelligent factor is, I couldn't tell you. And I don't believe it's Santa Claus in the sky. I think it's a much more neutral but unconditionally loving intelligence. And that's what I'm saying about that, because it helped me. I don't think it has to. Like, there are 1,000,001 ways to change your state. But that was pivotal for me to say, okay, I'm worthy. Okay, I'm here. Now let's get to work. And the work was changing the inner state of saying, I love me. I accept me. I had to be okay when I made a mistake. I had to be 1,000% the parent and maybe even God, if you want to call that, unconditionally loving to every mistake I've ever made in my entire life. And I'll probably make some more, because I don't foresee dying anytime soon. And if you're breathing, you may or may make a mistake. And mistakes I used to, like, abhorred making, because judgment upon fury would come down, and it was my own judgment. And it's crazy how I lived that way for so long. And I'm very grateful to not live that way anymore. So I know I keep saying, changing your state comes from within, and then you start seeing the external out. So I must have had, in 2013, enough action going on internally to take loving care of myself. So I stopped, where I slowed down, because I was still, even out of therapy, I was still really hard on myself. And I can get that way because that's a pattern. It's a pattern that's hard to break. But it's doable, because everything is there's an ability to manifest anything you desire. And it just takes good old fashioned repetition, practice. It just takes practice. So that year, 2013, was pivotal in me starting to take loving care of myself and not giving up on myself and not abandoning myself in that way. And then it started to shift, almost immediately, where I would see more love and care and attention. I guess I wouldn't say miraculously per se, but it was the external started to change. And I didn't do anything extra. Like, I was working on me, and obviously there were times when I would reach out to people. But sometimes it was just coming at me. Like, it's hard to explain because you're not in my head right now. And I literally have a vision of like that year as being so important to starting to see that state change. And I'm trying to let me think of another example that maybe I can wrap your head around. It's like I was talking about the Amy Cuddy changing your biology. You don't have to ever have been confident to change your biological chemicals in your brain, which is funny. But the thought processes. So this is why I like to pair to do cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, NLP. And then if you have trauma, that's a next level thing, which is important to accept and handle, and even move out of, because it's very possible to move out of trauma. I've done it, and I've had clients that have done it. So it's changing the meaning behind the situations and empowering your inner self. Like, very much like all types of healing and all types of manifestation. Now, you can manifest things without being empowered, and that's why sometimes it's not always your favorite thing. Like, you might manifest, well, I don't want to go in the negative. This is the Daily Awesome, but that's another topic, because I could talk about this for hours. But changing your state. So if you're feeling depressed or sad or anxious or whatever, there are multiple ways to change your state. You can become aware of what you're thinking. Like, okay, because the feedback is your emotional loop. And this is why knowing your emotions, as annoying as they can be, because they're not convenient, and but they're very important and informative, is that if you know your emotional state, or even thinking state, if you have a hard time pairing with emotion. I think that's Mike Moore. No. Getting in touch with that is just a feedback information loop. So, say you're depressed, and you notice that you are repeatedly patterning a thought process, whatever that thought process is. You need to stop the thought process, and that's easier said than done if you have rumination or intrusive thoughts, but the techniques are the same across the board. It's just doing the work. So the technique would be becoming aware of your thought or feelings. Distraction would be one, but not for a very long period of time, just to get out of that brain pattern loop. Two, it would be once you're aware of the thought and you've stopped the thought, at least, if not in its track, at least along where it's going deeper and deeper into a spiral, you would change the thought patterns, like, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm happy, and even if happiness is like too much of a stretch, or I'm loved is too much of a stretch, I can believe that I could be loved. I can believe, I'm open to the possibility that I am lovable. I am open to the possibility that this person loves me. I am open to the possibility of making more money. I am open to the possibility that, what's the other thing people want? Money, love. I'm open to the possibility of being healed. I'm open to the possibility of whatever you want. And that starts to change the state immediately. And it takes repetition. So this was long-winded. It's a little hot in my car. It's a beautiful day. But changing your state takes those things. And then it's just repetition. Some people would call it the law of assumption. Some people would call it a lot of different things. When you have a trauma background, I think it's a little bit more challenging to beat over your head. Like, I love and approve myself and I make $10,000 a month and whatever. It's doable, but you have a lot of resistance usually when you're in any emotional state that isn't healthy. So getting yourself to an emotional state that's healthy is why it's easier to do good things for yourself when you have a stable family environment. It's easier to get a job. Like, it's just easier. And those are the facts of life. But if you don't have the easy, that's not the get out of jail free card. It just means that, okay, you have a little bit more work to do. And it might be what you have to accept the fact that it may take you more mental strength and acuity and repetition to get what you want. But you can have it. And go get it, tiger. All right. On that note, if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, you can find the links below. If you want to like, share, subscribe, if you, maybe I'll have a giveaway. When I get to 100 subscribers, I will pick randomly who will have a call or a lunch with me, if you want to. I know you want to. I know you want to hang out with me because I'm so much fun. I check about all these fun things. All right. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Peace.